The morning sun filtered through the blinds as I stared at the weathered family photo on my bedside table. My brother Thomas smiled back at me from behind the glass, his arm draped casually around my shoulders. That picture was taken 15 years ago, at our parents' anniversary celebration. Back then, I could not have imagined how everything would change, how the bonds of family could unravel so completely, or how I would become the architect of my own brother's downfall. My name is Janet Morrison, and this is the story of how I discovered my brother's betrayal and the path I took to ensure karma found its way back to him. Growing up, Thomas and I were close despite our 5-year age difference. He was the charismatic one, always charming his way out of trouble, while I was methodical and reserved. Our parents adored him, and so did everyone else. When our father passed away suddenly from a heart attack, when I was 23, Thomas stepped into the role of family protector. At least, that was what I believed at the time. Our father had built a successful construction company from the ground up, Morrison Building and Development. It was his legacy, the culmination of 30 years of hard work. His will was straightforward. Thomas would take over as CEO, given his business degree and experience working summers at the company, while I would receive a substantial inheritance and a 25% stake in the business. I had never been interested in construction, having pursued a career in accounting instead, so this arrangement seemed fair. "You should not worry about anything, Janet," Thomas told me at the funeral reception, his hand firm on my shoulder. "Dad prepared for everything. The company will thrive, and I will make sure you and Mom are taken care of." I believed him. That was my first mistake. For the first few years, everything seemed fine. Thomas sent regular dividend checks, and the annual reports showed the company was growing. I was busy building my own accounting firm, and our mother was adjusting to life without Dad. Thomas married Elena, a sophisticated art dealer he had met at a charity gala, and they had twin boys. We gathered for holidays and birthdays, maintaining the facade of the perfect family. The cracks began to show 4 years after Dad's death. The dividend checks grew smaller, and Thomas explained it away as reinvesting in the company's future. When I asked for more detailed financial reports, he brushed me off, saying I would not understand the complexities of the construction industry. Despite my background in accounting, he insisted on treating me like I was financially illiterate. "The market is changing, Janet," he would say condescendingly. "We need to adapt. Trust me to handle this." Then came my mother's diagnosis, stage 3 pancreatic cancer. The prognosis was poor, and the recommended treatment was expensive and not fully covered by insurance. When I called Thomas to discuss how we would handle the medical expenses, his response was unexpectedly cold. "The company is going through a rough patch right now," he said. "I cannot liquidate any assets at the moment. Perhaps you could cover it initially, and I will reimburse you when things stabilize." Something in his tone made me uneasy. This was not the brother I knew. I agreed to cover Mom's treatment costs, draining most of my savings in the process. I told myself Thomas would come through eventually. 2 months into Mom's treatment, I received a call from Marco Delgado, a former project manager at Morrison Building and Development. He had been let go in what Thomas described as necessary downsizing. "Janet, I do not know if I should be telling you this," Marco said hesitantly, "but something is not right at the company. Thomas has been moving assets around, creating shell companies." I tried to ask questions, and was fired the next day. My stomach twisted. Marco had been with the company since I was a child. My father had trusted him implicitly. His words confirmed the suspicion that had been growing in my mind. "Can you prove any of this?" I asked. "I have some documents," he replied. "Not a complete picture, but enough to raise serious questions." We met at a quiet coffee shop the next day. Marco brought a folder containing invoices, bank statements, and corporate registration documents. As an accountant, it did not take me long to spot the irregularities. Thomas had been systematically siphoning money from the company into a separate entity called Horizon Investments, which appeared to be wholly owned by him. Millions of dollars that should have been reinvested in the business or distributed as dividends were disappearing. "When did this start?" I asked, my hands shaking as I reviewed the papers. Based on what I could find, about 6 months after your father died, Marco answered grimly. It was small at first, but it has accelerated in the past 2 years. My mind reeled. While I was draining my savings to pay for our mother's cancer treatment, Thomas had been embezzling from the family company. The betrayal cut deep, but I forced myself to think clearly. I needed more evidence before confronting him. I need to see the complete financial records, I said. And I need to do it without Thomas knowing. Marco nodded slowly. The annual audit is coming up. Hernandez and Associates has been handling it for years, but they are very friendly with Thomas. They might be turning a blind eye. Then we need to change auditors, I replied. As a 25% stakeholder, I have the right to request a special audit. The next few weeks became a covert operation. I contacted a respected forensic accounting firm and, citing concerns about financial irregularities, exercised my shareholder rights to initiate an independent audit. Thomas was furious when he received the notification. "What the hell are you doing, Janet?" he shouted during our phone call. "You are going to waste company money on an unnecessary audit because some disgruntled ex-employee filled your head with nonsense. If everything is as you say, then the audit will confirm it, and we can all move on," I replied calmly. "But as a shareholder, I have concerns that need to be addressed." "You have never cared about the business before," he snapped. "Why start now?" "Perhaps because our mother is dying of cancer, and suddenly there is no money to help with her treatment," I answered, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Perhaps because the dividend checks that help support her have been shrinking while you and Elena just purchased a vacation home in the Hamptons." There was a long pause on the line. When Thomas spoke again, his voice was cold and controlled. "Fine. Have your audit. But do not come crying to me when this damages the company's relationships and reputation." The audit took 3 weeks, and the results were worse than I had imagined. Thomas had diverted nearly 40% of the company's profits over the past 4 years. He had created a complex web of transactions that effectively hid the money trail. But the forensic accountants were thorough. They uncovered everything, including offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands where much of the money had ended up. Most damning of all, they discovered that Thomas had forged my signature on several documents, effectively diluting my ownership stake to less than 5% without my knowledge. He had also taken out loans against company assets, putting the entire operation at risk. With the evidence in hand, I had a choice to make. I could pursue criminal charges immediately or confront Thomas and give him a chance to make things right. Despite everything, he was still my brother, and a public scandal would devastate our mother in her fragile condition. I arranged to meet Thomas at his office after hours. He was waiting for me with a glass of scotch in hand, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. "So your witch hunt is complete," he said as I entered. "Found any monsters yet?" I placed the audit report on his desk without a word. He did not touch it. "I already know what it says," he muttered. "Your accountants have been very thorough." "Why, Thomas?" I asked simply. "Why would you steal from Dad's company? From your own family?" He laughed bitterly. "You want to know why? Because this was never supposed to be my burden. I had my own plans, my own dreams. But Dad insisted. The dutiful son has to take over the family business. What about what I wanted? So you decided to bleed it dry instead?" I could not keep the disgust from my voice. "I deserve that money," he snapped. "Do you have any idea how hard I have worked to keep this company afloat after the recession hit? The stress I have been under. While our mother struggles to pay for cancer treatments," I retorted. "While I emptied my savings to help her, because you claimed there was no money." He had the decency to look away then. "Elena has expensive tastes. The boys' private school, the house in the Hamptons, it all adds up. Those are choices you made, Thomas. Choices to prioritize your lifestyle over your family's well-being, over the company Dad built. What are you going to do?" he asked finally, looking up at me with something like fear in his eyes. "That depends on you," I replied. "You have 24 hours to transfer all the diverted funds back to the company accounts, resign as CEO, and restore my proper ownership percentage. If you do that, we can handle this as a family matter. If not, I take this to the authorities." He stared at me, searching for weakness, for the little sister who had always looked up to him. But that person was gone, replaced by someone who understood that true family does not exploit one another. "You are bluffing," he said finally. "You would not send your own brother to prison." I leaned in close. "Try me." I did not sleep that night. Part of me hoped Thomas would do the right thing, that some remnant of the brother I had loved remained. The other part had already accepted the truth. The Thomas the first thought I knew had never really existed. The next morning my phone rang. It was Elena, Thomas's wife. "How could you?" she hissed without preamble. "After everything Thomas has done for you." "What exactly has he done for me, Elena?" I asked tiredly. "Stolen my inheritance? Lied to me for years? Left our mother without proper care?" "He built that company into what it is today," she insisted. "No, our father did that. Thomas has been dismantling it piece by piece. You have no idea what pressure he has been under," she continued. "The lifestyle expected of a CEO." "Save it," I interrupted. "Has he agreed to my terms?" There was a pause. "He says you are being unreasonable. He is willing to increase your dividends going forward and bring you onto the board, but he cannot possibly repay everything at once. It would bankrupt him personally. Then he should have thought of that before he stole millions. My terms are not negotiable. He has until 5 p.m. today." I hung up and spent the day preparing the documentation for the district attorney's office. At 4:30 p.m. my lawyer called. There had been no transfers, no resignation letter, nothing. "He is calling your bluff, Janet," my lawyer said. "Are you sure you want to go through with this? Once we file these charges, there is no going back." I thought about our father, who had built his business on integrity and hard work. I thought about our mother, fighting for her life while her son lived in luxury on stolen money. I thought about the employees of Morrison Building and Development, whose livelihoods were at risk because of Thomas's greed. "I am sure," I replied. "File the charges." The arrest happened 3 days later. Thomas was led out of his office in handcuffs, the scene captured by local news cameras that had been tipped off anonymously. The company's stock plummeted as the scandal broke. Elena stopped taking my calls, and mutual friends began choosing sides. Our mother, still weakened from her cancer treatments, was devastated. I sat by her hospital bed, explaining everything as gently as I could, showing her the evidence of Thomas's betrayal. "There must be some mistake," she whispered, her voice thin and frail. "Thomas would never." "I wish that were true, Mom," I replied softly. "But I have seen the proof. He has been stealing from the company for years. Why would he do such a thing?" Tears slid down her hollow cheeks. "I do not know," I admitted. "Maybe he felt entitled to more. Maybe the power went to his head. Whatever the reason, he made his choices." In the weeks that followed, I was appointed interim CEO of Morrison Building and Development. The board, faced with overwhelming evidence of Thomas's fraud, had little choice but to accept my leadership. I took a leave of absence from my accounting firm and dove into the monumental task of saving my father's legacy. The company was in worse shape than even the audit had revealed. Thomas's mismanagement extended beyond simple theft. He had neglected critical infrastructure, delayed necessary equipment upgrades, and alienated long-standing clients with arrogant behavior and missed deadlines. I worked 18-hour days, meeting with employees, clients, and financial institutions. I brought Marco Delgado back as operations manager, and together we began the slow process of rebuilding trust, both within the company and with our business partners. Thomas, meanwhile, was denied bail due to flight risk concerns. His offshore accounts made him an obvious candidate for fleeing the country. Elena hired a high-profile defense attorney, but the evidence against Thomas was overwhelming. The prosecutor offered a plea deal, 10 years with possibility of parole after 7, rather than the potential 25 years he faced if convicted at trial. Elena came to see me after the plea offer, arriving at my office unannounced. She looked thinner, the designer clothes hanging loosely on her frame, dark circles under her eyes. "You have to help him," she said without preamble. 10 years will destroy him. He is not made for prison. He should have considered that before he committed fraud, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. The prosecutor's offer is more than fair given the extent of his crimes. "What about your nephews?" she demanded. Have you thought about what this will do to them? Growing up without their father. It was a low blow but not unexpected. I had always loved Thomas's children, spending holidays and birthdays with them, bringing thoughtful gifts and genuinely enjoying their company. I think about them every day, I said honestly. And I am setting up a trust fund for their education with my own money, not company funds. They should not suffer for their father's actions. Elena's composure cracked then. We are going to lose everything. The house, the cars. Thomas hid most of the money in investments I cannot access. That was by design, I told her. He made sure you had no legal connection to his fraudulent activities. It protected you from criminal charges, but it also means you cannot access those funds. What am I supposed to do? She asked, genuine fear in her voice. I had anticipated this moment. I have a proposal. The company owns a 3-bedroom condo downtown that you and the boys can move into. I will help you find work in the art world again. I know you left your gallery position when you married Thomas. The boys can stay in their school through the end of the year, and we will find something suitable after that. She stared at me, suspicion warring with desperation. Why would you help us after what you have done to Thomas? I did not do anything to Thomas, I corrected her firmly. He did this to himself. I am helping you and the boys because you are still family, and they are innocent in all this. In the end, Thomas accepted the plea deal. The day of his sentencing, I sat in the courtroom watching my brother, once so confident and charismatic, now diminished in his orange jumpsuit. When given the opportunity to speak, he offered a carefully crafted apology that sounded rehearsed and hollow. The judge was not impressed. Mr. Morrison, you betrayed not only your company and its shareholders but your own family, she said severely. You stole from the legacy your father built, neglected your mother in her time of need, and deceived your sister who trusted you. 10 years is lenient considering the scope of your crimes. Thomas did not look at me as he was led away. I felt no satisfaction, only a profound sadness for what could have been, for the brother I thought I had. Our mother's condition worsened in the months following Thomas's sentencing. The stress of the scandal had taken its toll on her already weakened body. I moved her into my home, hiring round-the-clock nurses to ensure she received the best possible care. In her more lucid moments, she would ask about Thomas, and I would tell her sanitized versions of his prison adjustment. He should not be there, she would murmur. He made mistakes, but he is still your brother. I know, Mom, I would reply gently, but actions have consequences. She passed away 6 months later, with me holding her hand. Thomas was permitted to attend the funeral under guard, standing awkwardly apart from the other mourners in his handcuffs and prison attire. We did not speak that day. There seemed to be nothing left to say. In the 2 years since then, Morrison Building and Development has not just recovered, but thrived under my leadership. I discovered, somewhat to my surprise, that I had an aptitude for the construction business. Perhaps it was in my blood after all. I expanded into green building techniques and affordable housing projects, areas my father had been interested in exploring before his death. The company's reputation gradually recovered as we delivered projects on time and on budget, treating our employees fairly and our clients honestly. I took pride in restoring my father's legacy, improving that integrity could be profitable. Elena and the boys adapted to their new circumstances better than I had expected. She returned to work at a downtown gallery and eventually started dating again. The twins, now in middle school, spent 1 weekend a month with me. We never spoke about their father during these visits, focusing instead on their current interests: soccer, video games, and increasingly architecture. The older twin, Michael, had his grandfather's eye for design. 3 years into Thomas's sentence, I received a letter from him. The paper was cheap, the handwriting more hesitant than I remembered. Dear Janet, it began. I have had a lot of time to think in here. Too much time, really. I was angry at you for a long while. It was easier than being angry at myself. But the truth is, you were right to do what you did. I betrayed Dad's legacy. I betrayed Mom when she needed me. And most of all, I betrayed you, the one person who always looked up to me, who trusted me without question. I cannot undo what I have done. The money is gone, spent on things that seem so meaningless now. The company would have collapsed eventually under my leadership, even without the fraud. I was never the businessman Dad was, never had his vision or his integrity. I hear the company is doing well under your guidance. That does not surprise me. You always were the smart one, the one with principles. Dad used to say you had his head for numbers and Mom's moral compass. He was right. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I threw away. Not just the money or the company, but our family. That is the loss that haunts me every night in this cell. Take care of my boys if you can. Tell them something good about me someday, even if you have to make it up. Your brother, Thomas. I read the letter several times, searching for manipulation, for an angle. But for perhaps the first time, Thomas seemed genuinely remorseful. It did not change what he had done or bring back what we had lost. But it was something. An acknowledgement, if nothing else. I did not write back immediately. Instead, I focused on the company, on the twins, on building something lasting from the ashes of my brother's betrayal. 6 months later, I sent him a short note with a company newsletter enclosed. The newsletter featured a student design competition we had sponsored at the local high school. Michael had won second place with his concept for a sustainable community center. He has Dad's eye for detail, I wrote. Both boys are doing well. Elena has been promoted to gallery manager. The company just secured the West Side development contract. Mom would be proud of how things turned out, despite everything. Janet. It was not forgiveness exactly, but it was an opening, a small crack in the wall between us. Whether anything would grow through that crack remained to be seen. Last month, I visited Thomas in prison for the first time. The years had not been kind to him. His hair had thinned, and deep lines had formed around his eyes and mouth. But there was something different about him, a humility that had never been there before. We talked about neutral topics mostly, the weather, a book he had been reading, the twins' academic achievements. As the visit drew to a close, he looked at me directly for the first time. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I did not think you would." "Neither did I admitted. "The company, it is more successful now than it ever was under my leadership, is not it?" he asked. "Yes," I answered honestly. "We just won the Chamber of Commerce Business of the Year award." A complicated expression crossed his face, regret, pride, envy, acceptance all mingled together. Dad would have been pleased. "I think so," I agreed. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had just been honest?" he asked suddenly. "If I had told you I was struggling with the company, if I had asked for help instead of stealing and lying?" I finished for him. "Yes, I wonder about that all the time." He nodded slowly. The great what if. I could have had it all legitimately, the company's success, the family unity. Instead I have this. He gestured around at the visitation room. "Karma," I said simply. "What goes around comes around." "I never believed in that before," he replied with a faint smile. "But I am starting to." As I drove home from the prison, I thought about the long path that had led us here. The betrayal, the confrontation, the painful process of rebuilding what was broken. I had not sought revenge exactly, but justice. Although to Thomas, they probably felt like the same thing. The price of his betrayal had been high, paid not just by him but by all of us. Our mother had died without seeing her family reconciled. Elena had lost her comfortable lifestyle. The twins had lost their father during their formative years. And I had lost the brother I thought I knew, the family we might have been. Yet something new had emerged from the ashes. A stronger company, a more honest relationship perhaps between Thomas and me. One built on truth rather than illusion. A chance for the next generation to learn from our mistakes. As I pulled into my driveway, I glanced at the framed photo on my dashboard. A recent picture of me with the twins at Michael's design competition. They were smiling broadly, proud of their accomplishments. Despite everything, they were turning out well. Perhaps even better for having learned hard lessons about integrity early in life. I had not sought revenge, but karma had found its way to Thomas nonetheless. And in its wake, something unexpected had occurred. The possibility of redemption, not just for him but for all of us. The sun was setting as I entered my home, casting long shadows across the floor. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to build rather than destroy. That, I decided, was the true legacy my father had left us. Not just a company, but a choice. We could tear down or build up. Thomas had chosen the former. I was choosing the latter. And in that choice lay all the difference.